Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey guys, hope you're all having a fantastic day here in January of 2023. Hard to believe it's 2023, right? Also hard to believe that, just a little over 100 years out from the beginning of Prohibition, we have as many home distillers as what we do, right? Not necessarily moonshiners, although there's some of those too, and that's fine. But the number of home distillers that we have, that excites me about the future of distilled spirits, but also all kinds of distilled things such as tinctures and medicines and essential oils and the various different applications of distillation beyond beverage alcohol, which are every bit just as important as beverage alcohol. And I suspect that having a good understanding of beverage alcohol distillation will help you out in any of those art forms as well. So I feel like I had a lot of head movement going on there. As I said before, I don't like doing these talking head videos. So if I'm not animated, I don't feel like there's enough going on. Anyhow, I'm going to try to hit two questions in this video because I feel like both of them are grain related. One of them is a fairly basic question, and the other is more of a kind of philosophy theory question that I think I can knock out in, roughly 10 minutes. So we're going to start with Billy Bob Thornton. I'm guessing it's not the same Billy Bob Thornton, but if it is, that'd be damn cool, right? From the comments section of one of the videos. He says, "Hi, Alan. I never dealt with grain and just wondering, when doing a grain mash and converting starches over, do you gelatinize the grain if it is not malted? For example, in my area, you can buy sacks of rye straight from the farm, unmalted. I'm not sure how to malt in the suburbs, although would be interested on more info on malting too. So theoretically, a guy could take the unmalted rye, mill it, then cook it to gelatinize, then let it cool down to about 150 degrees, and then pitch malted ground 6-row barley and amylase, then let the magic happen for the conversion and go on like usual from there." So yes, absolutely. This is exactly what we do with all grain distilling if we're not using malt. So there's a couple different things that you could do. You could obviously malt the rye, and I know in suburbia that can be a little hard, but in small amounts. And I need to show you guys this at some point. It's in a couple of videos, maybe the smoked apple brandy or smoked apple corn whiskey video I did. You might see the malting bucket that I made. You can also check out, I think the name of it, Still in Old School. I think he did a video on his malting bucket as well. And these allow you to do 3, 4, 5 pounds of grain at a time and malt pretty easily, especially if you have a dehydrator on hand, where once everything is germinated, you can dehydrate it at a low temperature and subsequently knock the roots off of the malt that you make. So we will get into that at some point, and I'll do a video on my malt bucket. You guys may have to remind me. If you don't see it in about a month, just start sending me messages about how to malt in the bucket, and I will do a damn video about it. So yes, we do gelatinize that grain. With rye in particular, you do not have to go to high temperatures. 160 to 170 is really, even 170 is on the high end for ground unmalted rye. And what I would do is exactly what you talked about, right? So go up to 160, 170, hold there for 30, 45 minutes, gelatinize everything, and then drop down into that. I wouldn't go over 145, but now you're going to be probably using strike water, so adding water to get your conversion, but make sure that once that water is added, your temperature is 145 or below so that you don't denature those enzymes, basically. But yes, you're on exactly the right track. That's exactly what you want to do with a cereal mash. And there's lots of great information out there about cereal mashes on Still It and Bearded and Board. And I've done a few here. Wayne Herbert, Crazy 8 Moonshiner just recently. Along with myself, I've been doing a lot of rye mash stuff, but this is with a high proportion of malted rye as well as unmalted, or malted rye as well as malted barley. But that method works as well. It's a step mash. It starts from the low end and goes up. So what you would do is you would actually add your malt to your hot water at about 110 degrees, hold there for 15-20 minutes, take that on up to 135, add your rye in, Take that, hold that there for about 15-20 minutes, and take that rye on up to 145 with the malt in there. Hold at 145. I've been holding for about an hour. You could probably get away with less. And then I take it subsequently up to about 162 for pasteurization on any bacteria that might be in there. It's not going to completely eliminate all of it, but it'll take care of the vast majority of it. And I am getting fantastic yields out of it. That old step mashing method is actually an old Seagram's method. And it's also a beer method. A lot of the beer guys use it, but it pulls out some enzymes from rye to keep it from getting as sticky as what we all know that it can get. So, all right, moving on to the next question from my buddy Brad, who asked I withhold his last name, so I will. So, question for you. Have you messed around much with darker roasted grain? I made a chocolate whiskey with 80% pale malt and 20% chocolate malted wheat that kind of smells weird. Maybe my cuts were off. Maybe it's too young. Maybe it's because the grains were a little older than I normally use, or maybe some mix of all of the above. I asked because I made a chocolate bourbon a while back that was 52% Amanda Palmer, 35% rye, or 35% ye old pale malt from Sugar Creek Malting. My good buddy Caleb up at Sugar Creek. Check him out, guys, here in Indiana. Indiana proud stuff and fantastic grain provider. And 13% chocolate rye malt. It turned out wonderful. Maybe I'm dumb for expecting some sort of semblance between final products containing chocolate roasted grains. I don't see many professionals listing darker roasted grains in big amounts in their mash bills. Is there any particular reason why? So I do play around a lot with chocolate malt. I just mashed in a chocolate malt rye whiskey where I actually was able to source the chocolate rye malt from my buddy Wayne Herbert of Ozark Stillworks, who was just on Distiller's Talk. If you've not heard that episode yet, I promise you it is worth checking out. Go jump on there and check it out. And if you're not listening to Distiller's Talk and you're into this channel, you're going to want to check out Distiller's Talk with Christy Atkinson and myself. I promise you will enjoy it. So I just mashed that in. I've mashed in chocolate rye in the past, and I do a lot of chocolate malt corn whiskey at my distillery at Spirits of French Lick, which is 90% corn and 10% chocolate malt. There are a few distillers playing around with chocolate malt. You will see it in some of the moonshine groups, especially chocolate malt rye whiskey. The thing about chocolate malt is it's interesting in small amounts. You don't need a whole lot of it to really push flavor heavily. So even when you do see it used, another example would be Hard Truth here in Indiana. They make a chocolate malt rye whiskey. When you do see it used amongst the larger distillers, because it is a roasted, nearly burnt characteristic to the actual malt itself, which has as much of a coffee aroma as it does a chocolate or a mocha aroma, you will very rarely see anything over 10% used, specifically because that can come off almost burnt in nature, right? Or almost like burnt coffee. So at between 3% and 10%, you tend to get those notes that you were actually after. In a white spirit, I'd stay between 3 and 5%, I think, in general, to get the flavor that you want, that kind of darker chocolate tonality coming through, but not overwhelming the other grains in the mixture. When you go into a barrel, I think you can get away with more like 10%, because that stuff does esterify over time in the barrel and create some very interesting mocha-like flavors or espresso-like flavors. But you got to be very, very, very careful with it. Again, you know, we're all familiar with scorching things in our still and what that smells like. Go too far with chocolate malt and you're going to get that same reaction. The same thing is true with caramel malt. I love caramel malt. I will tell you this. I tried to make single malt whiskey out of caramel malt a couple different times, and what I ended up with aromatically smelled a whole lot like dog food. So it made fantastic drain cleaner. So that's my best advice when it comes to chocolate malt and the flavors you can expect out of it, and why you don't see more distillers playing with it. There is a very good friend of mine who's a non-distiller producer who is paying a distiller in Northern Kentucky to make some bourbon for her. 2 different mash bills, both containing chocolate malt. This is chocolate barley malt, not rye malt, but one with a wheated mash bill, one with a rye mash bill. And when that stuff comes out, guys, I'm telling you, the 4, 5, and 6-year-old stuff of that we've had, just beautiful. And it'll be worth every dollar they ask for it, and it'll be very highly allocated. But anyways, as always, reach out to me if you have questions. bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. Comments below. Social media. Various different apps and places out there. Yeah, you know, go to thealchemistcabinet.com. You can find me through the links on there and buy something from the store, the warehouse. It supports this channel. supports If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything podcast, and supports everything that my wife and I are trying to do with our lives that we're passionate about, including helping other people such as yourself. So have a great one, guys. Later.